We already decided, Mom. Lacey, the kids, and her mom are moving in next weekend. Their place is too cramped. Grant said it like he was reading off a grocery list, flat, final, unquestionable. He didn't knock. He never did. Just barged in like always, brushing past the threshold, as if he'd built the house himself. I stood in the kitchen coffee pot, halfway to the filter hands, trembling slightly. Not from shock, not exactly. From recognition. Recognition of a pattern I'd ignored for far too long. The assumptions? The entitlement? The way my silence had been mistaken for agreement. My generosity for permission. This is my house, Grant, I said, not raising my voice. He waved it off. We know. It's just until we find something bigger. Ottilia can't stay alone anymore. The kids are excited. And it'll be good for you company, you know. At your age, living alone isn't great. There it was. At your age. As if turning 70 had erased the woman who worked double shifts cleaning other people's floors for 4 decades to buy this place. As if having gray hair made my opinion decorative, I poured the coffee slowly, deliberately. And when did you all decide this a couple weeks ago? Lacey and I talked about it. Look, you've got 3 bedrooms, you're here by yourself. Martina's mom, Ottilia, she's getting forgetful. We can't afford a caregiver, and daycare's too much. This makes sense for everyone. Everyone but me. He walked through the living room, glancing around like a contractor assessing a renovation site. The kids can take your sewing room. Lacey and I will sleep on the fold-out in the living room for now. Ottilia can have the guest room, my sewing room, my thread, my patterns, the shelves I painted myself. That's where I go to remember who I am. I didn't argue. Not then. Okay, I said softly. Grant smiled, kissed my forehead like I was some agreeable pet, and left to get things organized. I sat down with my coffee and stared out the kitchen window. By the time the pot was empty, I had a plan. The kids'll take the sewing room. It's got enough space for bunk beds if we clear out your stuff. Ottilia can have the guest room. Lacey and I will manage on the couch until we find a bigger place, Grant said, gesturing with open palms like a realtor walking a client through a listing. I nodded, staring past him at the hallway where sunlight filtered through the door of the room he'd just handed away. He called it the sewing room, like it was just a label on a door, but it was never just a room. It was the only place in the house that felt wholly mine. The shelves lined with thread by shade. The sewing table I'd rescued from a yard sale and refinished by hand. A photo of me and my friend Noreen holding up the first quilt we ever made still hung crooked above the window. The soft chair by the corner where I'd sip coffee and read when I couldn't sleep. I wondered how long before Leandro's toys replaced my baskets. Before Cecilia spilled juice on the carpet, I'd shampooed every spring. Before they shoved my patterns into boxes and slid them under beds that weren't meant to be here. I didn't say any of that. I just stood there and nodded, like I was watching someone else's life unfold. Later that afternoon, Lacey showed up at the door with a paper bag and an overdone smile. Hi, Alara. I brought sweet bread from that bakery near Elmwood. You always liked it right. She kissed the air near my cheek and walked in like she'd already moved in. I offered her coffee the way I always did. She declined as usual. Just wanted to stop by and say thank you, really. This is going to help us so much. The kids are so excited. And my mom, well, it's been a hard year for her. Her tone was all celebration, like I'd volunteered to host a party and forgotten the date. She talked like I should be honored to hand over the last quiet place I owned. I smiled and sliced the bread. Then I asked her if she wanted to see the room. I called Maura the next morning, just like I always did when I needed air I could actually breathe. She didn't ask questions, just told me to wear my good shoes and meet her by the park gate. We walked the gravel trail side by side, past the same benches and trees we'd passed 100 times before. The air smelled like cut grass and morning. I told her everything about Grant barging in with his announcement about Lacey and the sweet bread about the guest room, the couch, the kids, the sewing room. She didn't interrupt, just walked and listened her steps, steady beside mine, her silence thicker than sympathy. At the third bend in the path, she finally spoke. "It's time." That was all she said. I didn't respond right away, but I felt the words settle inside me like a stone falling into place. "I've been saving," I said. "Little by little ever since I retired. I set up a second account. Grant doesn't know about it." Maura turned to me, eyes steady. "You ready to use it?" "I don't want to fight," I said more to myself than her. "I just want peace. I want my coffee in the morning without someone already moving boxes through the hallway. I want my home back, Maura." She nodded. "Then don't wait for a fight. Make a move before they unpack." The breeze rustled the trees above us. For a second, I let myself imagine what it might feel like to walk into a home that was mine again. Not just legally, but soulfully. A place where no one was rearranging my life to suit theirs. A place where the silence didn't feel like surrender, but sanctuary. We finished our loop and sat on our usual bench. Maura reached into her pocket and pulled out a mint, pressing it into my palm like a promise. "You already know what to do," she said. "You just needed someone to hear you say it." When I got home, the hallway smelled faintly of Lacey's perfume. A cardboard box sat at the edge of the sewing room. I stepped over it, walked straight to my room, and opened the drawer with my folder. Lacey showed up again just before noon, wearing that same overdone smile and holding another bag this time with muffins. Blueberry, I think. She waved them like a peace treaty as I opened the door. "I thought we could chat over coffee," she said. "I know this moves a lot. I just wanted to say we're grateful." I stepped aside, let her in, and went to put the kettle on. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear her out. No war is won without knowing your opponent's tactics. She set the muffins on the counter and perched on one of the kitchen stools like she'd lived here forever. "We want to help." She began brushing invisible lint from her jeans. "With bills, groceries, that kind of thing. We don't want to be a burden." I turned from the cabinet mug in hand. "How much are you thinking?" Her eyes darted to the window. "Well, whatever we can manage. You know how it is? Times are tough right now. So, no number." She forced a laugh, but her shoulders tightened. "We'll do what we can. Grant's picking up extra hours." I set the mug down, untouched. "Did either of you ever think to ask me if I was okay with all of this?" That wiped the smile clean off her face. For a moment, she looked like a child caught in a lie. Then came the deflection. "Grant said you were happy about it. He told me you were relieved to have company." My throat tightened. Not from sadness. From fury dressed in disbelief. "He said that, yeah. He said you even smiled when he told you." I leaned against the counter, watching her, feeling the old habit of politeness. War with the new pulse of resolve rising inside me. I'd smiled all right, but not because I agreed. I'd smiled because I knew that was the last day someone else would decide my future without consequences. I didn't say another word, just nodded and handed her a plate for the muffins. When she left, I dumped the coffee down the sink. Too bitter to swallow. Just like the lie. The teller at the bank greeted me by name. I gave her a tight smile, the kind you wear when you're doing something irreversible. She asked if I wanted to sit, offered me coffee. I declined both. I already knew exactly what I came to do. My fingers trembled only once when I signed the first form. After that, it was muscle memory. Account numbers, routing transfers, wire instructions. I'd been saving quietly for years, funneling what I could from sewing projects, estate sales, and the pension checks I never fully spent. "Is this for a large purchase?" the teller asked. "Yes," I said. "A necessary one." She nodded, typed a little more, and printed a receipt. I folded it carefully and tucked it into my purse next to the folder I'd brought from home. From there, I didn't go to the grocery store like I said I would. I didn't even go home. I drove across town, parked by the brick building, with Ivy climbing the side, and walked into the office of Winston and Blair, attorneys at law. Jared Winston met me in the hallway with a firm handshake and kind eyes. "Mrs. Flint, everything's ready." He led me into the small conference room with the heavy oak table. No unnecessary chatter, just the sound of paper shuffling and the distinct click of my pen as I signed my name again and again. Property transfer agreements, contingency clause waivers, purchase orders for a smaller, quieter home just outside city limits, paid in full under my name alone. You understand. Once this goes through, Jared said the current property will no longer be yours. You'll be moving out before the weekend. That's the idea. He slid the final paper toward me. You don't need to explain. But just know most people don't walk in here with their entire plan already laid out. Most people don't have adult children squatting in their futures. I signed. Jared pressed his stamp on the final page. I stood, thanked him, and walked out lighter. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the first moving truck had arrived. I woke early before the sun warmed the kitchen tiles. The house was still mine for a few more hours, and I intended to spend them well. I made one last pot of coffee, real coffee, the kind I liked, not the instant stuff Lacey had tried to stock in my pantry. The scent wrapped around me like memory. I sipped it slowly as I looked out at the yard. My yard, my garden. The tulips were finally open. Their deep crimson petals caught the morning light, like little hands waving goodbye. I stepped outside with my phone and took pictures of the flowers, the rusted bird bath I never replaced, the swing I used to sit on with my grandkids when they were little and still looked at me like I mattered. Back inside, I opened my closet and packed just what I loved. My wool cardigans, 2 dresses I'd kept since my teaching days, my favorite walking shoes, the apron my daughter had embroidered when she still called me just to say she missed me. The rest I left on the hangers. Let them sort through it like treasure or trash. I folded my sewing machine into its case, added the fabric I'd hoarded for years, and tucked in a small photo album, just one. The rest of the albums would stay behind. By mid-morning, I stood in the guest room. Sunlight filtered through the lace curtains. This was where Lacey's mother Ottilia would have stayed, where she would have kept her pill bottles and left socks in the laundry sink and turned my quiet into routine noise. Not anymore. Outside, the real estate sign had been quietly removed before dawn. A small white van sat in the driveway now. On its side, a simple logo. Women Craft Collective, empowering elder artists. They would use the house as a workshop and shelter a place where older women could gather, sew, paint, teach, and belong. I left the front door unlocked as planned. A welcome, not a warning. Then I lifted the final box into Maura's back seat, settled in, and closed the door without looking back. Move the truck up, Mom always parks to the right, Grant shouted to the driver as they turned into the driveway. I watched from Maura's car parked across the street beneath the shade of an elm tree. I didn't wave. The truck braked suddenly. The driveway was full. Cars folding tables, easels, tubs of fabric, spilling over like bouquets. Women in their 60s and 70s painted on the porch, sewed in the living room, sipped coffee in my know their kitchen. Lacey's car pulled in behind the truck. The kids burst out excited, tugging at each other and pointing at the swing. Ottilia was slumped against the passenger door, still asleep, her mouth open slightly. She didn't stir as the door swung shut behind them. Grant jumped out, eyes narrowed. What the hell is this? I got out of Maura's car and crossed the street. He spotted me and marched forward. Is this some kind of event? Why didn't you tell me? I looked him in the eye and said, because I don't live here anymore. The words landed like a dropped box. He blinked. What are you talking about? I sold the house, I said calmly. Last week? The new owners moved in yesterday. It's theirs now. Lacey walked up, holding Cecilia's hand. You sold it. Her voice cracked like glass. Sold. Grant repeated, his face going red. To who? Why, to women who needed it more than you did, I replied. The front door opened. A woman in a tie-dye apron stepped out, waving a paintbrush like a wand. Ilara, come say hi when you're done. Grant stared, speechless. You were going to move in without asking, I said. Now there's nowhere to move into. The kids sensed the tension. Leandro clutched his sister's hand, whispering. Ottilia stirred at last in the car, confused, disoriented. You can't do this, Grant said, his voice lower now. This was supposed to be what you decided, I interrupted. Grant's voice tore through the neighborhood. You sold it? Without telling me, you've lost your mind. Lacey's voice was quieter but shaking. Ilara, please, this must be a mistake. We gave notice on the apartment. The kids, I didn't make this mistake, I said, holding my ground. You did, when you assumed I'd hand over my home like a spare key. The neighbors were already watching. I spotted Mrs. Tucker half concealed behind her curtain, and Jim from across the street pretending to water his shrubs. Grant turned to the moving crew, waving his arms wildly. Don't just stand there, start unloading. One of the movers, a man with gray in his beard and something gentle in his eyes, slowly started repacking the boxes into the truck bed. You have no right, Grant growled. This was supposed to be ours. You can't just… This was never yours, I cut in. And it's not mine anymore either. I pulled a manila folder from my bag and held it out to him. Here. Deed transfer. Stamped and notarized. You'll find today's date on it. He didn't take it. He just stared at it like it might burn. You're bluffing, he muttered. I opened the folder and let him read it. He blinked hard. The words registered. His lips parted. Nothing came out. You're going to regret this, he finally hissed. I'll get a lawyer. I'll have the sale reversed. You're unstable. I'll prove it. I almost laughed. Then tell your lawyer to start with the closing statement from the buyer. Full cash offer, paid, recorded, and legally clean. Lacey sat down on the curb head in her hands. The kids stood behind her, silent now. Even Ottilia had stepped from the car, slowly realizing this wasn't the welcoming day she'd been promised. I looked at them and didn't feel anger anymore, just relief. A kind of release I hadn't known I needed. I won't be guilted into surrendering my life, I said. And with that, I turned away and walked toward the car, waiting to take me home. The key turned with a soft click. My hand lingered on the brass knob for a second before I pushed the door open. It was smaller. Yes, but it was mine. 2 bedrooms. A kitchen with light bouncing off pale countertops. A porch that faced a line of trees instead of fences and opinions. The smell of fresh paint and pine cleaner filled the air, clean, quiet, untouched by arguments or expectation. Maura stepped in behind me, already pulling open boxes. You weren't kidding about packing light, she said, grinning. I didn't need much, I replied, just the parts of me I still wanted. We moved slowly, folded sweaters into new drawers, lined the bathroom shelf with my favorite soaps. Maura placed a framed photo of my late husband on the bookshelf without asking it. Belonged there, and she knew it. We didn't need to talk much. She hummed while she worked. I let the silence settle in. By evening, we were done. Or close enough. Coffee, I asked. Always. We sat on the porch with mugs in hand, the last bit of orange sinking beneath the trees. There were no sirens here, no yelling from next door. Just the soft click of bugs, the faint shuffle of wind against leaves. I forgot what this felt like, I said. Maura looked over. What, breathing without flinching? She nodded. You earned this. After she left, I stayed. Let the mug grow cool in my hands. The quiet wasn't just absence, it was presence. Of space. Of peace. Of a life that was mine again. There were no toys scattered across the floor. No voices debating where to sleep or who should pay what. Just one lamp glowing behind me, one heartbeat steady in my chest. I locked the front door. Not out of fear, but out of habit. Then I walked down the hall, set my alarm for the morning, and pulled the quilt over my legs. The only sound left was my breath, and it was enough. Grant showed up on a Tuesday. No car in the driveway. No Lacey. No kids. Just him standing awkwardly in front of my gate, like a man who wasn't sure if he should knock or walk away. I opened the door before he could decide. He looked older, not in years but in weight, the kind that settles in when your certainty collapses. "I didn't think you'd really do it," he said. "I didn't think you'd really try to take it from me," I replied. He dropped his eyes. "We just thought it made sense." I didn't answer that. I let him carry the weight of those words himself. After a long pause, he tried again. "I came to say, I'm sorry." "Are you?" I asked. He flinched. "I am. For not asking. For pushing. For assuming." It wasn't the apology I'd dreamed of. It wasn't deep enough or specific enough or anything close to what I deserved. But it was something. And I'd stopped waiting for perfect. "You don't get to rewrite what happened, Grant. But you can stop adding to it," I said. He nodded slowly, like he knew there was nothing more to bargain for. "I miss the kids," I added. His face lifted slightly. "They can visit," I said. "If I invite them. If you ask, not assume. This house doesn't run on guilt anymore. Respect isn't optional. It's the entry price." "I understand." "No, you don't. But you will." We stood there, just the two of us in the calm that had replaced the chaos. He looked behind me into the hallway, the kitchen, the life he wasn't entitled to anymore. Then he looked at me. Really looked, and for the first time in years, I think he saw me not as a mother, not as a placeholder, but as a person with a spine and a line that wouldn't be crossed again. "I'll wait to be invited," he said quietly. I nodded. Then I closed the door. My door.